Hey, what is up guys, I'm Exteria, and this is day 2 of what I learned is the strongest thing to play in TFT set 16 PBE. The reason why I'm doing this series is because there's always going to be patches every day, if not almost every other day, so the meta changes pretty rapidly. For today's patch, it didn't really change much, but you can feel the difference in power of certain units. And if you want to keep up to date with all the info, consider hitting that subscribe button for future content. Getting right into it, for day 1, we talked about the strongest comp right now currently would be Ryze with Azir because of the Shurima effect on Ryze's kit allows his ability to stun, and you can also print out lots of econ. And now for day 2, in this video, I'm going to give you a breakdown on actually how to play this comp step by step. As of what I know right now, there is 4 different variations to play the Ryze board, and 3 of them is basically Ryze carry, but the 4th one is technically Yunara carry, so I would rather play the other 3 variations. And this first variation is going to be the Demacia version. The opener you want to do is Sona, J4, Anivia, and a Rumble. This opener is actually really strong in general, just because you have 2 defenders and you have 2 invokers. Sona is a really strong unit in my opinion in the early game, just because she does damage and she also heals. And the best items you can slam is probably either a Jewel Gauntlet, a Shojin, or a Voice Staff. Either of these items is fine. Word on the street is double Nashor's Tooth on Ryze later on is actually really powerful. So if you can build Nashor's Tooth, it's fine. But in order to make this item work, you have to build Jewel Gauntlet no matter what in order to make the Nashor's proc his ability where you gain a lot of mana if you crit. So this is technically Bryce's BIS for what I know right now, but most of the time it's easier just flexing around these items on Sona instead. And then when you hit level 5, you should be able to throw in Poppy because you're able to unlock her just by having 2 Demacia units on the board and you just put items on Sona, so you should be able to get her. So just buy her and just keep her in your inventory until you hit level 5, then you can throw her out for 3 Demacia. And your main goal here is to look for Xin Zhao no matter what, because Xin Zhao is the key component to get your cannon later. So once you do hit Xin Zhao around level 6, if you level up J4 2, Rumble 2, and hopefully either Poppy or Xin Zhao 2, if not, just get another unit of any variant of either Yordles like Rumble or any defender unit like J4 or somehow Ionia. So if you have a Shen 2, then that's good because this allows you to summon cannon. And in order to get cannon, you have to have at least 8 star levels of any of those units that I just said, which is Ionia, Yordle, and defender. And this will be basically your board in the early game. You could just interchange having, instead of Xin Zhao at the time, then you could just have this as your board, and this board is actually pretty powerful. But you want to keep your Xin Zhao in your inventory, so don't sell him, because when you hit level 8, you want to play the real board, and that board consists of having that Xin Zhao back again. So right now, the only regional units we have is Yordle and Demacia, so you want to look for any Targon. So you can use like Leona for example, or you can use Aphelios. It doesn't really matter, just any Targon is fine. And look for 1 more Ionia unit. So you can look for example like Yasuo over the Anivia, and now you have 4 regional units. The reason why you want to do this is because the next turn after from when you hit level 8, you're able to get Ryze on the board. So that's like the main reason why you want to play this specific board, is because you're able to summon one of the best 5-cost units out there, and you just sell Sona and transfer the items, whatever you have, on to Ryze. It doesn't really matter. And from here, we still have 3 Demacia activated. If you want to upgrade, just instead of J4, get Garen level 2. So now you have a better board here. And instead of Yasuo, what you could do during the same combat phase is put everything down to the 3rd row and have at least 1 unit in the front row, because the next turn as well, you're able to get set. And his quest is super easy. Just position like this, how I said, and you're able to get set. And now this will be your board at level 8. It's actually pretty powerful. If you don't have Azir yet, you can use whatever Targon unit, it's fine, or whatever value unit at the time. But if you do hit Azir, I would recommend playing him no matter what. And the positioning you kind of want to do is something like this. Like this should be fine. Most of the time you won't have this Rumble on the board. You could use whatever unit at the time. Like for example, if you have Leona 2, then that works. Because you want to use that 8th unit slot for Noxus later. And in order to get Noxus, you have to throw out Azir and lose 2 rounds. So once you do lose 2 rounds and get Noxus in, this is the main board you want to play. You can use either Garen or you can use Noxus as your main tank, whichever one's level 2 first, just make them your main tank. And if you hit level 9, you just throw whatever unit you want. It doesn't really matter, just whatever looks cool to you. And this is basically about it, how to play the Demacia version of Ryze. What we get on Ryze with that board is we get the Demacia version, and this allows you to execute targets. So we get that power for Ryze. You're also able to get extra splits on your blast. So you're able to hit way more units now since you have Ionia on the board. And because we get Shurima, we're able to stun units, and we're also getting a bunch of econ over time as well, so we can hit level 9 easier. And if you do have Targon in at the time, then you do heal the board a little bit. So Targon is okay. If you really want it, you can have it. But we also get Yordles, which lowers the enemy's damage by 12%, which is actually pretty OP in the long run. So if you play this board, you get all those powers on Ryze. Unless you have Targon in for whatever reason, then you get extra power on as well. Now onto the other version of Ryze, which is the Zaun and Piltover version. And the opener for this one is kind of similar to the last one, where you have Rumble and J4 as your frontline. And your backline unit you want is Lulu with Kog'Maw. So this is actually pretty strong because you get Arcanist, and you also get Defenders, and you also get Yordles. If you have items on Lulu like Shojin, Voice Staff, Jewel Gauntlet, or Nashers on her, it doesn't really matter, just build whatever you can. Then you can get Poppy and throw her at level 5. From here, if you have most of these units star up, you should be able to get Kennen pretty easily afterwards, so now you can get Kennen. And now this board consists of having 4 Yordles. But the tricky part here is now we have to play more Juggernauts, and the reason for that is because we want to get Singed. So after you play this board, then you want to build up to Juggernauts. So instead of having J4, you get Cho'Gath, which also gives you Void for Kog'Maw. And then as you level up, you look for other Jug units, like for example Blitzcrank and Nautilus, and then you're able to get Singed afterwards. You could take out Kennen at the time, and then just play this at level 7. This works as well, so you can get your Singed faster. Since Kennen is not a Juggernaut, he is a Defender, so you can just take him out and just play this. And then once you do get Singed, then now we can play our real board when we roll down for level 8. The issue with this style of the board though is more legendary units oriented, so I'm gonna show you the more budget version until we can get up to legendaries later. And that would be to have a Vi, so we get rid of our Nautilus here and we have Vi instead. And instead of Rumble, we have Seraphine, and then you play this board for a bit. The main reason why is because we have 4 synergies now of regional trait, so you're able to gain your Ryze next turn. If you're not able to have a Blitzcrank, then you could just use Targon instead. So like any Targon unit, like for example Aphelios, is fine. And you still get 4 regional traits either way. Most of the time I just like playing Blitzcrank for it because we get Zaun. So that's just totally up to you. If you can't get Zaun in for whatever reason, then just have +1 Targon. But once we do get Ryze, then you want to transfer your items from Lulu to Ryze, and we actually don't need her anymore. If you want to make it super budget friendly, you could use Leona too if you want to, over the Cho'Gath. Unless you want to keep Void in, but I feel like having Void in doesn't really do much for the board value. But the Void power up on Ryze is actually pretty strong because it does ignore 30% armor and magic resist. But in my opinion, it's not worth it to keep the Cho'Gath and Kog'Maw in for that. And instead of Kog'Maw, then we have Kennen in. And this would technically be your budget board. It's too budget that it's, in all honesty, you can't really win out too much with this board unless you somehow hit Azir. But at this point, you either make Singed your main tank or you make Leona your main tank and hope for the best kind of thing, because the actual board you want to upgrade into is to have Azir, and then you want to lose 2 rounds to get your Noxus on the board. So instead of Leona or whatever Targon you have, it turns into Noxus instead, and by then you should be able to get Ziggs. But in order to get Ziggs, you should put 3 items on either your Singed or your Poppy, either one's fine, or even Kennen. In order to get him, you have to put 3 items on a Yordle or a Zaun unit. So once you do get Ziggs, then you can get rid of your Poppy, and this is technically the board you want to play. And to upgrade the Blitzcrank, you can upgrade it into a Shyvana, and this is the board you want to play. It is super hard to play to transition into, but this board is actually pretty decent as well. I prefer the Demacia style, but this style is also fine as well if you tempo fast enough to play this style of the board, or if you high roll an Azir, then this board will also be good to play as well. The benefits of this board, it allows your Ryze to do tons of damage because his 3rd cast will basically one-shot everything with Piltover, and the Zaun will also damage units over time. So this is more of a glass cannon style of Ryze over the Demacia version, which is more sustained. I almost forgot to talk about this. The Piltover modules you want would be anything to slow down your enemies with like stuns or mana reef. So any module that can debuff your enemy, just take that one. The 3rd version of Ryze is more legendary oriented, and this one is the Noxus style. Essentially, you just play the same thing as the Zaun and Piltover one, where you use Rumble, Lulu, Kog'Maw, and J4 opener. But unlike the Zaun comp, you don't really need any unlocked units at all. So you just play your strongest board and you can build up to this. And these units are probably like the best ones you can use because you have 4 regional traits right here, so you're able to summon Ryze afterwards. So once you do get Ryze, then you just transfer whatever items you had into Ryze, and instead of using Sion, you can look for a better unit, which would be Mel. In order to get Mel, you have to 2-star Mbessa, put 3 items on her, and let her die for a combat. So once you do that, you're able to get Mel, which is a better upgrade instead of having that Sion on the board. And technically you could play this up until level 9. And then once you do hit level 9, you look for that Azir and you trade out most of these units you see here. So the units you will take out here would be like Seraphine, Vi, Rumble, and Leona. And you just look for a bunch of legendary units here. Because Swain's a Juggernaut, you're going to need Shyvana. So now you have 2 Juggernauts on the board. And because you're playing Azir, you should be able to get either Renekton or Noxus. Noxus is preferred. So once you do get Noxus, then you have him out to have that Shurima. And most games actually win out with having Fiddlesticks on the board. This is actually really strong. I actually like this board a lot. It actually does work. And if you're your 9th unit, you can throw out Renekton. But what I personally like to do is to have Annie instead, and it gives you that Arcana for Swain. But the issue is you can't really throw out your Tibbers unless you want to take away Fiddlesticks, because Tibbers actually counts as a unit. So when you throw out Annie, technically she does count as 2 slots, but you could just use her without the Tibbers and just have Fiddlesticks instead. Totally up to you. So basically just mix and match with any of these units here and just play whatever you want. The only synergies you get here besides the Shurima for the knock-up and the stuns is Noxus, and that allows you just to pierce. This means that your ability just goes through enemies and you can hit the backline. But compared to like the other boards that have more traits, this version of the board is actually a lot better in my opinion, just because you have more value units on the board that could just explode everything. I'm not gonna really explain the last version of Ryze board because technically this board is similar to it, where you play Yunara carry instead. So in order to play this board, you basically use all these units you see here. Yes, you do have to unlock Kennen, and you also do have to unlock Kubuko somehow, which I'm not really going to explain because I'm hungry and lazy right now. But essentially, the items you will need is Guinsoo Rageblade and IE for Yunara no matter what, and you get Even Shroud for your tank Wukong. If not, you could do it on Taric, whichever one's level 2 first, either one is fine, but Wukong is preferred. And you put the totem in front of Yunara, because for whatever reason, if you put it next to her, it doesn't count as a backline totem from Freljiord to gain the extra damage, so you want to put it in the front of Yunara. And the positioning doesn't really matter to have rest of the units on the Freljiord thing, because you're using the Freljiord thing just to power up only Yunara, and that's basically about it. And if you do hit level 9, you're able to play Ryze on the board, and whatever AP items you had on Lysandra, just transfer it to Ryze and you're good to go. If you play this board in general, you're able to unlock Ryze as well, so you should buy Ryze and just pivot it until you hit level 9 to throw him out. Another comp that I've been seeing being played a lot, and it's actually really strong, would be to have Reroll Bard and Reroll Sion. The way how this board works is, in order to get Bard, the way to unlock him is you have to roll 4 times before stage 2. So the best way to play this comp is to have extra econ augment or some sort of reroll augment where it allows you to roll without griefing your econ in the early game. If you do decide to play this without econ augment, do it on stage 2-5, or is it 2-6? The Krug round basically, where you roll 4 times at Krugs and then you're able to get Bard next turn. If you do it afterwards, you will not get Bard. So you have to do it during Krugs or beforehand. And once you're able to play Bard, then you just reroll Sion and Bard at level 6. Just hit stage 3-2, hit level 6, and then roll for everything you see here. And the best upgrades you can do when you hit level 8, because you will get Volleybird no matter what, you can trade out one of the 1-cost units like Alawi or Shen. I prefer taking out Alawi because I actually like the shield on Shen, which is pretty nice. And because he's a Freljiord unit, you can throw out one more Freljiord, which would be with Kubuko. And yes, you do unlock Kubuko pretty easily because you're playing Brawlers anyways. You're gonna get him eventually. But the unit I would throw out here would be Lysandra, because Lysandra is a Freljiord and she's also an Invoker with Kubuko. And then when you hit level 9, then you want to look for a +1 Freljiord unit, which would be like Braum or something of value. And now we have 3 Freljiords. And same thing like the Yunara case, just put the totem in front where it lines up with Sion and Bard, and that's basically about it how to play this board. For your items, just get Jewel Gauntlet and Nashers. If you can't get Nashers, you can do like Rageblade is fine. But the double Nasher is actually pretty nice because it makes Bard cast infinite. If not, you can do Death Cap, this is also okay. Just as long as you have either Nashers or Rageblade is all you need. But if you do play Nashers, just remember that you have to have Jewel Gauntlet no matter what in order to make this item work. And this is the main things that I learned about day 2 of set 16 PBE. If you have any questions about the Ryze tech or even anything else, feel free to talk about it in the comment section down below. Or if you want to, you can check me out live on either Twitch or on YouTube. You can ask your questions there too, either one is fine. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.